Okay, we'll make a start. Thanks very much, everybody, for joining us for tonight's Ritchie Centre or Hudson Institute Ritchie Centre Open Day, or Open Evening. We're very much looking forward to talking to you. Do feel free to submit questions via the Q&A button below during the presentations, and we'll finish up with a Q&A session at the end. So my name's Associate Professor Egan Wallace, and I'm a member of the Ritchie Centre. And the way that our session is going to work tonight is I'll shortly introduce Professor Stuart Hooper, who's the head of the Ritchie Centre. Then Professor Susie Miller will give an overview of the sorts of projects that some of the supervisors and sorts of projects that we have in the Ritchie Centre. We'll follow that with a presentation from one of our past honours students in the Ritchie Centre, Madeline Smith. Then Professor Caroline Gargett will give an overview of how to apply for honours and PhD students in the department, and then we'll finish back with question time at the end. Okay, thank you. So I'll pass over to Stuart now.
Okay, thanks Megan, and thanks everybody for coming along to the open session tonight. My name's Stuart Hooper. I'm the head of the Ritchie Centre, and we're one of the centres of the Hudson Institute. But we'll let a little bit of this crash here. Our mission is to improve the health of women and infants and children. But I'd just like to say that we're not just a centre of the Hudson Institute, we're actually a centre of one of the oldest centres of Monash University, research centres. And as a result of that, we are the research arm, the main research arm of the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology and Paediatrics. But in addition to that, we're also one of the major research gateways for women's services at Monash Health, as well as Monash Newborn Services and the Melbourne Children's Sleep Centre in the new Children's Hospital at Monash. Therefore, we really sit at the nexus between the Institute, the University and Monash Medical Centre or Monash Health. We're a major destination for research students. At the moment, we have around about 30 PhD students, 22 honours students and 1 master's student. So we attract a very large number of students and therefore have a lot of experience of supervising undergraduate or graduate students. Why would you want to think about doing research training at the Hudson? Well, there are obvious reasons for it, one of which is that you'll develop a qualification that demonstrates you are highly skilled in biomedical research. But doing research, doing science is much more about generating knowledge and taking in knowledge. It's much more about developing critical skills, and in particular critical thinking skills, writing and speaking skills. And there's no better place than the Hudson to actually to learn these skill sets. And they're very important in terms of a future research career, but not only in research, but in all other aspects of professional development. You will also gain training in state-of-the-art research platforms. But I suppose also very importantly, you will get to meet colleagues, supervisors and other students who are all dedicated to improving human health and well-being. What are the research themes of the centre? Well, the type of research that we do. We do a lot of research in women's health, in fetal and neonatal health, infant and child health, as well as cell therapy and regenerative medicine, and infection, inflammation, immunity. Now, that might seem like quite a broad spread, but it is all very integrated and relevant to that major focus that I talked about at the start, which was women's, children's and infants' health. So I'd like to hand you over now to Susie Miller, who will start talking about what it would be like to be a student in the Ritchie Centre and the type of projects you can do.
Perfect, thanks Stuart. Hi everyone and welcome. Thanks for joining us. I'm Susie Miller and I'm one of the Deputy Directors of the Ritchie Centre, and I lead the Neurodevelopment and Neuroprotection theme. so essentially brain development at the Ritchie Centre. I've been tasked with talking about the projects that are on offer at the Ritchie Centre. I think there are about 60 or 70 in the booklet, so I'm not going to go through all of those. I'm just going to provide you with an overview of what these might look like. The first thing to note is that we're a really diverse bunch at the Ritchie Centre. You might choose to work with a supervisor like myself, who's a scientist, a physiologist, or a clinician working with women, pregnant women, or babies. Or you might work with an epidemiologist or someone in public health. We cover all of these diverse supervisor roles at the Ritchie Centre. You might also choose to work on a range of different projects. You might work in a clinical situation with women or pregnant women or babies themselves, looking at neonates or young children. Or you might choose an animal-based project in which you might be looking at animal models of compromised situations, perhaps during pregnancy, in which case you might be looking at sheep or rats or mice. Or you might choose a cell-based culture in which you're looking at organs in culture or cells in culture. These are all possibilities at the Ritchie Centre. Now, a really important thing to keep in mind is that we work along all of the stages of the continuum of women's, pregnancy and baby health. And so the projects on offer represent all of these. So a couple of examples in women's health. You might choose to undertake a project that broadly examines the diagnostics or treatment for endometriosis or or endometrial organoids. You might choose to look at bioengineered materials plus stem cells as a treatment for pelvic organ prolapse. In pregnancy, there are lots of different projects on offer, including clinical-based projects in which you might be looking at novel ways to reduce stillbirth in Victoria or new therapies for preeclampsia. You might choose a clinical-based project in which you look at the effects of maternal obesity on placental function. Or there's even a project on offer looking at an assessment of the impact of telehealth this year on maternal and neonatal outcomes. We have a very broad program of research looking at stem cells, and these are predominantly stem cells that are obtained from the placenta and the umbilical cord. You might choose a project that's a bioengineering project looking to enhance the stem cell therapeutics. You might look at the angiogenic potential of exosomes, so this is how they produce blood vessels. Or you might look at a project in which you can take cord blood from women giving birth and how we might isolate and bank those umbilical cord blood stem cells to use as a neuroprotective treatment. There are also projects in which you might look at neonates, and these include neonates in the hospital or neonates in our animal models. In a clinical situation, you might choose to study the fundamentals of birth, like when is the optimum time to clamp the umbilical cord, or how the lungs fill with air. This is a really neat project using the synchrotron. You might look at obstructive sleep apnea or other sleep disorders in a range of different conditions. You might choose a project in which you look at neonatal seizures and whether we can improve treatments for neonatal seizures. Or you might look at the role of the fetal environment, the intrauterine environment, and how that affects the neonate after birth. Finally, preterm birth is a really big problem in Australia and worldwide. So there are lots of studies in which you might choose to look at babies and animal models of preterm birth for both the diagnosis and the complications and the consequences of preterm birth. These include some clinical studies looking at the immune system and anti-inflammatory approaches for the preterm baby. You might choose to look at NICU emergencies. How often do they occur and what are their risk factors? Cerebral oxygenation in preterm babies, and these are all clinical potential projects. Or you might choose a project in which you look at novel therapies for preventing the brain injury that's associated with preterm birth by targeting the inflammatory system. That's the an overview of some of the projects that you might choose. There are lots more in the book, so please have a look and match supervisors with those projects and talk to as many people as interest you. I'm now going to hand over to Maddie, who is a student with my group, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about the student perspective.
Thanks, Susie. I'm Maddie. I'm a PhD student at the Ritchie Centre, and I'm currently undertaking my PhD, and I'm about a year and a half into my PhD, and I've absolutely loved it so far. So I thought I would start off with some advice, which I hope you've probably received this advice before, and that is to find a project that really excites you and you'll enjoy your honours experience a lot more. And I think before you meet with potential supervisors, if you can do a bit of background reading and understand the project and the area a bit, you can provide the supervisor with some questions and you can have a bit more of a back and forth conversation about your potential project, which would it would set you up to develop a really cool honours year. So at the Ritchie Centre, there's a really supportive community of students, and I found that PhD students and staff are always happy to chat and provide any advice to honours students that they need. And the Ritchie Centre is also a really social environment to be in. All the students sit together, and any questions that come up throughout the day, you can talk to anybody about it, and you're not isolated. We are at the moment, obviously, because of COVID, we can't see as many people, but everyone's in it to help each other. And because everybody is so open and willing to help, it really sets you up for success in your honours and then PhD if you choose to go down that path. So at the Hudson, there's the Hudson Institute Student Society, or HIS, which provides a lot of social opportunities. And Susie, if you can go to the next slide. HIS, which I'm a part of as the Ritchie Centre student rep, holds trivia nights, movie nights. There's a netball team, which isn't happening at the moment, but there was, last year we had weekly netball games on, I think it was a Wednesday night, which was lots of fun, and they were held at the Monash Clayton campus. There's also the 3-minute thesis competition, which is held annually, where PhD students condense their PhD into a 3-minute talk, which is quite challenging but also really interesting, and they present it in a creative way that other scientists that may not be in their area can understand. There's also dumpling nights when we're able to hold them, and there's also a student retreat which is held every second year. And in 2018, everyone at the Hudson went to Phillip Island for a night, and it was kind of like a Hudson conference, which gave Hudson students the opportunity to present their work and get to know other Hudson students, which was awesome because we were able to get to know people outside of the work context. And there's also the Mhtp Research Week Symposium, which is held at the Hudson, where students can present their work, and that's another great opportunity to have a conference experience. So I've absolutely loved being a student at the Hudson, and I can highly recommend it. Thanks, everyone.
So I'll share my screen. Oh, here we go. Now, yep, here we go. All right. Now, can you see my screen?
We can. You just need to turn it to
Oh, yeah. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. My name is Caroline Gargett, and I lead the Women's Health theme in the Ritchie Centre, and I'm going to now talk to you more about the serious side of it, and that's applying for honours or PhD. And as already has been mentioned, you really need to find a supervisor and a project that really interests you. And the best place is to look in that book with all the projects that have already been mentioned.
Caroline, I might just, sorry, I'll interrupt, it's on really small on our screens. If you can just put it onto presentation.
It is on presentation.
Oh, we must be looking at the wrong screen then, maybe.
Oh, right. Not sure how to.
Do you want one of us to pop that on?
Because I checked it before. Stop. So I stop but I can't see what else I need to do.
Just click back. Yeah, click on the bottom play.
I'll end it, perhaps.
Perhaps end and go again.
No, it's still sharing. Stop share. I'll try again. Sorry. Now. So you can probably see the small screen now. Is that right?
No, we can't see anything.
Now?
There we go.
Yep. And then if I do this, you should get the full screen.
It's not playing. Maybe I'll share and you can talk to mine. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't understand why it's not doing it. I'll have to get rid of this. Let me show you. It's really strange. And stop share. I think it's a problem when you've got a double screen. Okay. So now to the serious business of applying. We got, yep. Okay, I'll just talk to this. It's got, I've got the preliminary ahead screen. Anyway.
The same issue as we had before. We're seeing Megan's presenter view.
Okay.
Yeah.
Better?
No. Yes, I think you've got it. Yeah, thank you. Once you've found a project, I think you really need to find several projects and shop around a little bit. Talk to the supervisors. Emailing them first is a good idea. They may be interested in looking at your academic transcript to date. And there you want to, when you talk to the supervisor, you want to really explore about what the project's about, whether it's the kind of thing that you really want to do, what the expectations are. And also look to meet other members of the supervisory team and particularly a student who has worked in that team before so that they can tell you just how it is. And if that's the project you really like, you need to sign up. The projects do go quite quickly, so that's why you need to have a couple of spares. Now, Honours runs in a number of different ways, but in particular, the Bachelor of Biomedical Science, the coordinator for that one is Mark Hedger, who's on site at Hudson. If you're want to do a BSc Honours, we recommend going through the anatomy department, and there you would need to contact Dr. Olga Panagiotopoulos. And if you're a medical student and want to do BMed Sci, you only need to contact our own Associate Professor Megan Wallace. If you can turn me on. Can you get the next slide? Thanks. Now, if you're doing a master's and a PhD, the same thing applies. You need to find the supervisor on a project that really excites you. This is for a lot longer, so you really do need to be sure. You will need to meet with your supervisors and the research team and make sure it's a good fit. And once you've decided on a PhD, then you can apply online. It's an online application. There's a couple of things that you really need to do beforehand. You need to get hold of an expression of interest or letter of invitation, and you'll work on that with your supervisor, and that has to be uploaded. You need to complete English proficiency and research qualifications checks. The supervisor also needs to check on you. They need to get an academic reference as well. And of course, you'll need some scholarship support, and there you can apply. There's 4 rounds in a year. If you're a domestic student, you would be, if you want to start next year, you'd apply on October the 31st, but you can also apply in May. If you're an international student, you'll need to get your skates on if you want to start early, because 31st of August is the next closing time. But there's another opportunity in March. Now, in the Ritchie Centre, we have 2 postgraduate coordinators, and these are the people that you need to contact for many of the forms needing signing or any kind of administrative information you need. They are myself, and I look after the obstetrics and gynecology students, and Professor Rosemary Horn, who looks after the students enrolled through paediatrics. And ready to go on to the next slide. And here's the link to the student booklet. I think this is probably the most valuable thing that you can tap into at the moment to go through all those 60 or 70 projects that we've been talking about over the presentation. And I'm...
Okay, are we finished, Caroline? So thanks everybody. That's really the end of our formal presentation, and we'll open it up for questions and answers now. We've had several come through while people have been speaking, so I'll just address those, and then we might open it up. Some of the other presenters might want to comment further on some of these. So the first comment was, are BSc Honours students able to do clinical research projects, or are they restricted just to laboratory research projects? And BSc and BMS students can definitely do clinical research projects as well. Just talk to the coordinator, look at what's in the booklet, talk to some of the supervisors, and then they will decide if they think you've got the relevant background. But we certainly do have science and biomed students doing clinical projects. Do we offer honours or summer placement internships? So the Hudson Institute normally does offer summer internships. I have a feeling that they're open to second year students though. Stuart or Susie, do you?
Yeah, I think they're more commonly for second year students, Megan, but I think that the summer placements, they're sometimes not that practical in the Ritchie Centre, because a lot of the research is very seasonal, and so you get much more out of it, sort of doing an honours degree rather than a summer's placement.
And just confirming again, the second half of that question was, do you need to be clinically or medically trained to do honours with us? And no, but you will
Absolutely not.
You will be sitting alongside those. So we have a lot of medical honours students in the department. In fact, the Department of O&G, Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, and Department of Paediatrics, which of course Stuart has explained we're the research arm of. But a lot of medical students come to those two departments. So you will be sitting alongside medical honours students as well, which just creates a fantastic culture. You know, really being able to cross-explain different projects, you'll get a much more strong clinical background by having them sitting beside you. There was another question about summer vacation.
Sorry, Megan, can I just interrupt there? I mean, the majority of our students aren't clinically trained. So, you know, the probably maybe 10% are clinically trained or are doing medicine. The rest are all biomedical or Bachelor of Science students.
So the next question is, do you take mid-year honours students? And that depends on the stream. So the Bachelor of Biomedical Science, we take mid-year Bachelor of Biomedical Science honours students. In terms of Bachelor of Science, that depends on the department that you're enrolled in. So some departments take mid-year honours students and some departments don't. So those have to be, Bachelor of Science has to be through one of the on-campus departments. So anatomy, microbiology, one of those on-campus departments. And yes, confirming summer vacations, my recollection is, and our recollection is, that summer vacation scholarships are available to second year students. And somebody's asked, are 3990 research projects possible to do at the Ritchie Centre? And yes, we commonly have 39. In fact, I think we've got 2 or 3 3990 students this semester.
Yeah, Megan, I have a 3990 student who just started, and she found our project in last year's student booklet and wondered if it was still available to do as a project, as a 3990 project, which it is, and she's doing it now. It's obviously a little bit tricky now because she's not in the lab, but she started. So there are definitely a couple of 3990 students.
And then somebody has already, one of our attendees has already completed a master's degree, and they're wondering if there might be any work available at the Ritchie Centre before they decide whether or not they'd like to do a PhD. So that's a good question. I'm not personally aware at the moment of any jobs that are available in the Ritchie Centre. Susie, Stuart, Caroline, are any of you?
I
No.
can't, certainly I can't think of any at the moment.
Yeah, they don't usually come up at this time of year. They usually come up at the end of the year, and particularly when grant rounds are announced. So that's when you're most likely to find a position. But yes, there's not many positions going because, as you would expect, it's very, very popular and there's lots and lots of people who are interested in those positions.
I think probably the right thing to do, though, would be to have a look through the booklet and have a look at the types of projects and supervisors that are involved in different topics. And if you find something that's particularly interested, then email that supervisor. That's the best thing to do.
That's right. And somebody's asked, are the 3990 projects run online? So 3990 students are actually allowed to attend the laboratories, but attendance is, we're trying to keep attendance to a minimum. So Susie, has your student been coming in or will be coming in?
She hasn't been coming in, and we will try and limit it as much as possible. She's doing a project that is, it was relatively easy to just switch to something that could be analysed offline, if you like.
I think that'll also depend upon the home department, because we aren't a home department for 3990 subjects. So that it'll either have to be physiology or anatomy, I think, wouldn't it?
I think the 3990 students, the contact is Jim Harris.
That's right. So we get 3990 students through physiology, anatomy, and also through Bachelor of Biomedical Science. So they're our three most common sources for 3990 students. Let's note that, and I think that will depend what's going to happen with the restrictions after September 13, whether they get extended or not. And then the capacity for on-site supervision. But we love having students on site, so we're certainly hoping that will happen soon.
Yeah, and again, the tip would be to have a look through the book, find a supervisor and a project that you just love the look of, and email that supervisor and ask what's possible.
So somebody's asked how the current lockdown restrictions have affected clinical lab aspects of projects this year for honours students. So that had a really wide variety of effects depending on the type of projects. So where it was possible to move projects online so that they didn't require on-site attendance, then we did that. A lot of the clinical projects, particularly where there's already data available, those ones could be done with students remotely. But many of our honours students have still been coming into the laboratory. So there was an initial time, particularly at the start of the year, while we were sorting out how we were all going to work in this new system. A lot of the students worked from home. At that time of year, they were largely working on the literature reviews anyway, so it wasn't too disruptive. And then once all of the new processes were put in place as to how we would work, then many of our students have been coming back on site. Susie or Stuart, would you like to comment further on?
Yeah. Well, sorry, we have 5 honours students in our group this year, and they're all back into work now, but that remains limited because obviously we're limiting the number of people in labs, but all students are allowed back into labs now.
So the other thing is that all honours streams will be using a document that will get submitted with the thesis, where the students have an opportunity, the students and the supervisors have an opportunity to document the impact that COVID-19 had on their projects, so that the examiners will take that into account, because there has been a range of restrictions across the whole university, not just with us, so that every honours student will have that taken into account. But I think probably we've been less affected than many other departments, partly because of the nature of the projects that we do, and that many of them were able to continue. Have we got, so we're actually spot on 7:30 at the moment. So I'm just going to click onto this final slide to remind you that tomorrow night are presentations, two presentations from the Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So the first session will be talking about the clinical projects and trial and projects in epidemiology. The second presentation will be talking about discovery research. So you'll learn more about the things that we do in the Ritchie Centre. as part of this presentation, and then at the end of the day, end of the evening, will be a presentation from the Department of Paediatrics. So again, you'll hear more about projects in the Department of Paediatrics, some of which include projects that are through the Ritchie Centre. Okay, if there are no further questions, we will thank you very much for joining us, and I'd like you to join me in thanking all of our presenters for this evening, and we wish you luck and we look forward to hearing from you about